No, not just because of that, Joseph. I did mention the bombing, the repeated, regular Israeli bombing of Syrian regime targets.
Because I know Palestinians were also treated by Israeli on-field medical doctors during this last war. You know, some civilians were treated, and that's what bothered me most about.
Is that the civilians the civilians they mutilated? They then treated them.
Well, you can call it that, but what bothered me most this year, probably one of the most. I wouldn't say what bothered me most. There were other things happening, like the ISIL terrorists, but one of the things that also disturbed me was just the negative media reporting against Israel. It's not all black and white. You know, we have to be objective, and
it looks pretty black and white. It looks pretty black and white there, don't you think, Joseph?
The killing of
that was quite black and white, wasn't it? The burning of that young boy to death, that was black and white, wasn't it?
And civilians, that's something.
This American boy being beaten to a pulp by 2 Israeli soldiers, that's pretty black and white, isn't it, Joseph?
That's impermissible, but in this kind of war where the Hamas wishes to wipe Israel...
But that wasn't a war, Joseph, and there's no Hamas in Jerusalem. That was in Jerusalem. That was an American citizen in Jerusalem being beaten to a pulp by Israeli soldiers. Joseph, the 5-year-old child that was shot in the face today has a big hole in her face. A 5-year-old boy with his 14-year-old sister were both shot getting off a school bus in the West Bank. There's no Hamas there. There's no war there. Why was that child shot in the face, Joseph?
I haven't heard the news today, George. I didn't watch the news today.
You won't find it on the news, Joseph. That's the problem. You won't find it on the news. You'll only find it here. Because the kid was just a Palestinian kid. His blood wasn't worth anything.
But even in Australia, George, they don't report everything. You know, fairly. The media is fairly biased towards Israel. For example, Hamas using human shields. So, like, Hamas were just as responsible.
But they didn't use human shields, Joseph. That's just a lie. Unless you think... Joseph, I'll let you back in. Jeremy Bowen, the highly respected head of Middle East reportage for the BBC for the last 30 years, who was there in Gaza throughout the conflict, explicitly stated that and Gaza's a very small place, that he never saw any such thing as Hamas using civilians as human shields. It's just a lie, Joseph. It's just a propaganda lie. Your namesake, Joseph Goebbels, the Gauleiter, propagandist of Hitlerism, he invented this. If you tell a lie, make it a big one. Repeat it often enough. Come on every show. Just mention it as if it were a fact. It's not a fact, Joseph. It's a lie. Go on.
What about Dresden? Wasn't that a war crime? What happened in Dresden? The slaughter of innocent German civilians?
Actually, I think it was. Actually, I think it was. So let's move on. We have a rare point. We have a rare point of agreement. Let's move on. We're not talking about 1945, Joseph. We're talking about 2014. We're not talking about Hitler's Germany, which both of us abhor. We're talking about Israel, which you support in 2014.
I just support the truth, George. I just want to be more objective.
But you're not being objective, Joseph. You just stated a lie that Hamas used civilians as human shields. Either you're lying or you're ignorant. You don't know that Gaza is a tiny place, just 20 miles long, just 2 miles across. and 2 million people in it. There isn't any room for anybody to be using anybody as a human shield. They're all there. They're fish in a barrel being shot.
I'm just trying to say Israel did its utmost best to avoid civilian casualties.
But that can't be true, Joseph. How can that be true? Israel killed 500 children in 4 weeks. 500 children, and thousands more were maimed, their lives destroyed. Almost all of the people who were killed were civilians. Most of them were women or children. How could that possibly be true, what you're saying, Joseph?
But if the Palestinians listened to their warnings, a lot of them would have been avoided. A lot of the civilians would have
there is nowhere
avoided
to go, Joseph. And a warning isn't worth the paper it isn't written on. They tell you, we're about to bomb your area. The people have nowhere to go. It's 20 miles long, 2 miles wide, 2 million people, rockets, bombs from land, sea, and air. What use are warnings? Oh my goodness. I've got to take a short break.